Kia ora, this has been from Janky Gamesmiths. I'm just going to quickly run you through the Janky Surface Mapper window. Now firstly, I've imported into my project the Ancient Ruins and Plants model package from Comeback. This is a free package available in the asset store. I'd highly recommend it. It's a very cool little package. And it has just the right kind of detail for this example today. So firstly, I've brought in the sword prop from the package, as you can see here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump up to the Janky drop down, Janky Recycler, and across to Janky Surface Mapper. And I will bring that in so it's attached off to the side here. There we go. Now what this window does is it allows you to create surface maps that can be used with the Janky Recycler shader, but also the surface maps it creates could be used with other shaders and other workflows as well. Or you could use this window to create stylized textures, but it all depends on what you're wanting to get out of its use. You'll see that it's quite powerful in some areas. There are a couple of things I still need to touch up on that aren't quite working properly, but they'll be fixed for the full release. So firstly, what I'm going to do is bring the sword game object in, because that's what I'm going to be working on. You don't need to bring this in, but it's nice because I can then have it live previewed onto the 3D model. Then what I'm going to do is I will find the textures associated with the 3D model. So I want the diffuse map, which I believe is Ancient Ruins Prop Diffuse. Bring that across. There is no height map for this particular model, so I'm just going to use the diffuse map again. And then I'm also going to bring across the normal map. Cool. Now with the surface mapper, you've got three different map types that you can make. You can do a depth map, a cavity map, or a masking map. Not all of the maps use all of the textures, but for this case, we're going to be using the depth map to make that surface map that I was talking about. So we'll just stick to this. These sliders allow you to introduce amounts of each of the different maps into, or each of the different initial maps into the final map output. So that's creating some nice edges there, but maybe I'll pull it down a little bit. Yep. And then for the depth map, there is a depth scale as an additional option there, so I can bring out the sharpness of those edges a little bit more. Now, what it's working on is simply just the data that's been provided in the previous maps. So the maps aren't very high resolution. You can see that we're getting pixelation in our output, and I don't really want pixelation for my particular model. I want to give it a sense of having slightly more detail. So what I can do is I can add in a noise texture. I'm going to use one which is supplied, which is called the Janky Diffusion texture. I'll make some more textures and include them later on, but just for now, this is your go-to texture for creating diffusion. Then what I'll do is let's jump back down here again. We've got a bunch of different map types that we can create using the surface mapper. So we've got HSV, which is the core map type to create. Makes all these nice pretty colors. We've got a basic grayscale, so that can be used to if you wanted to, maybe create AO maps or smoothness and roughness maps, or just better define your displacement maps, but this can also be used in the Janky Recycler shader as well. It is one of the mapping types it's compatible with. And then we've also got a color lerp option as well, which will let you remap the colors of that grayscale to whatever you want. So you can create, you could use this if you wanted as your final map or your final diffuse texture for your 3D model. It's entirely up to you. But there's a lot of power in that space. You've also got the ability to adjust the floor and the ceiling. So this is going to alter the model slightly again, and the map slightly again, and maybe let you target certain areas of the model. It can also become somewhat psychedelic within the HSV mode looking at it. But let's bring that back to where it was. And I can furthermore invert the map. Cool. Now, for this particular example, I'm going to use a small amount of Gaussian blur. So that's just going to break up the pixels. I want an even smaller amount. There we go. So it's just going to remove the definition of the pixels a little bit, and then I'll add the noise map in, and I'm going to get it to shift the hue of the HSV slightly. So there we go. And now what that's doing is it's introducing sub-pixel noise. So that will allow for greater detail when we get through to the recycler shader. Cool. And I'm going to output at a really high resolution so I get as much detail in there as I can. I'll generate the map out and just save it into assets so it's easy to access. Take just 1 second. There we go, it's been generated. And I'll open that up so you can see what you've got there. So now our pixels have just been broken up a little bit within that map. Like it's still got a relatively low resolution finish, but we're zooming in pretty far there. But that should be enough to get a little extra level of detail out when we move to the shader. Cool, so I'm going to turn that off, and now we're back to our original model. Cool, and I'm going to close the window. And just for the sake of this demo, I'll use one of the previously created materials. Just going to duplicate it. That you'll find in the examples there. So it's pretty much already all good to go. If I drop it on, you're going to see it does a whole lot of weird stuff, right? And there's a couple of reasons for this. So I'm going to get this to work particularly with this map that I've just made. First, the setting that it is entering in at is an anti-tiling setting. So I'm going to change it to UV map for the surface map. Cool, just take a moment to adjust. Then I'm also going to change it to hue rather than grayscale. And I'll bring across that, that surface map there. Now I think from memory, the arrays that are being projected onto here aren't very large, so it's only like, yeah, I think it's only 3 textures in that array, so we can see that there. And the length of the array is defined by the floor and the ceiling index as you set within the surface mapper area. There's also some coordinate displacement going on, and I want to lift that for the detail. So let's bring that to 15 and 25 to get some greater detail in there. Sorry, let me jump back to the cool. So what that's done is it's just breaking up the edges of the surface a little bit. The Janky recycler shader uses, I think it's a 13-point projection from memory is what I set it up with. So it projects from 13 different directions to cover the model. And the coordinate noise helps to break up areas of that projection so you get less static edges. If I like turn it off entirely, you'll see that you still get the slightly blocky edges, but for this I want to have slight rounding in that projection on the edges there. Cool. And array tiling should be fine. I'm not going to mess with that. I'll leave all of the other settings about the same. Maybe I'll bring down the normal amount on those arrays just a little bit. Now we've got the diffusion texture, which is just pushing these pixels around a little bit. Let me just double check how that influence is being mapped in. No, I'll leave it where it was. That's fine for now. Then we've got normal diffusion amount, and this pushes the textures around a little bit more in different ways. So you can see it's like breaking them up. I'll leave it where it is for the time being. It should be fine. Coverage, I'm actually going to turn the coverage off for now, just so we're not worrying about that interfering with what we're doing. And I'm just going to bring some of these settings down as well, so it's not really going to be influencing what we're seeing all that much. Maybe I'll bring that down for the color diffusion too. And the floor. Cool. Yep. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring in that original diffuse. And oh, that's a normal. So I'll bring in the original diffuse and the original normal, and I'm going to multiply in the diffuse. So now you can see some of that original detail coming through. And I'm also going to bring in the original normal as well. Maybe, there we go. Cool. So we're getting a little bit more of that detail in and through. And I'm not going to worry about this. So this is our smoothness, AO, and displacement texture, which I'll go through in another video, but that's how you, it's a channel pack texture, and I've got a little scriptural object that helps you build those that work with the Janky recycler. But I'm going to leave that out for now. And then what else do we have here? World noise. Actually, maybe I'll just turn off the world noise. Turn off the world noise to surface and world noise to coverage. Cool. So we're getting a nice mossy finish to the sword now. And now let me just start bringing back in the coverage settings. So let's put the ceiling at 1, and you need to put in a small amount of displacement for coverage to get it to work. Oh, I didn't put the mix in. There we go. Let's see if we're getting, there we are. So we can see that the coverage is now working correctly. There we go. And I'll actually bring that up pretty high maybe, just for this example. So we can see that that coverage is now pushing down into the 3D model. Cool. And we're getting a nice little bit of retexturing going on as well. Not much, it's subtle, but it's nice to kind of break things up. What happens if I bring this down? Nah, I'll leave it where it was. Easy. And then I can also use this map to control the textures that are being projected across the material. Oh, sorry, the model. And better control them. So in this case, because it's rocks, rocks all look like rocks, so there's not much really going on there. All right. Maybe I will bring in a different array then. So I can't remember what the metallic array looks like. Oh yeah, there we are. And these arrays are included in the example folder. Cool. So now we're getting something that's mossy, but a little bit more kind of like rusty in look. Let's mess around with the floors and ceilings again. Actually, maybe I want to invert those. So for that, I'll just set the floor to be above the ceiling. There we go, and we're getting, yeah, maybe like that. I kind of like that. But the moss isn't really working for me anymore. So let's find that sand texture. Oh, it's a little bit more noise going on there in the fall off than I want. So I'll just bring that down to something really low. There we go. Okay, so now we have a sandy, rusty sword rather than so much rocky sword. And then because the coverage is world space mapped, coverage is also going to follow the model as it moves around. Yet again, this is primarily set up for static models at the moment. But if I was to jump back into the material and swing it from world to local position, you'll see that everything stays consistent. So it just depends on how you want to set it, use this shader within your environments. I have noticed that there is a slight thing going on with the normals as we're moving around. Yeah, see how there's like these little pits here? Now that's likely happening because the normal mix currently isn't right. So let me jump down to the normal mix and see what's going on. Yeah, actually maybe 100% normal mix is best. Or even, you know, I'll lock that so it stops toggling off. And then let's bring up the normal mix for the initial normals. Yeah, there we go. Not too much. There we are. Cool. So that's pretty much how the surface mapper works with your 3D models to give them a bit of a different finish. Think of it like, you know, painting your car in a way, just putting a different coat on top, but it can completely change, I guess, the value of that 3D asset that you have maybe floating around in your asset library there. Cool. So I might leave it at that, and in future videos I'll go through the packing process for textures, and you know, maybe I'll even put together an entire scene from scratch to show you how to get to, you know, a nice finished product that has a really homogeneous feel to it. Yeah. Thanks for that. Catch you later.